Thank you. Item 2 on tonight's agenda is the Board of School Trustees Resolution of Commendation Awards. We have 2 this evening. The Crown Point High School Dance Team for being named National Champion in Small Varsity Kick at the 2023 UDA National Dance Team Competition. And 2.02, our Crown Point High School Wrestling Team for winning the State Wrestling Championship at the 2023 IHSA Wrestling State Finals. Can I motion for the approval of the accommodations tonight?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Babjack. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We'll now present those awards.
All right, so the first one that I have is for the, and I'll read the resolution. The Crown Point Board of School Trustees is honored to commend the 2022-23 Crown Point High School Varsity Dance Team for meritorious achievement. Be it hereby resolved that the Board of School Trustees for Crown Point Community School Corporation wishes to express sincere congratulations to the 2022-2023 Crown Point High School Varsity Dance Team for being named national champions in Small Varsity Kick at the UDA National Dance Team Championship. The Board of School Trustees publicly recognizes this achievement and renders it permanently to its minutes to be preserved for public posterity, dated this 27th day of February, 2023. And first up, we have Anna Gardner. Marianne Girona. Elena Longoria Zellers. Calliope Sakalaris. Reese Reddick. Grace Tiernan. Avery Teeble. Aviana Hall. Kylie Oloski. Elise Clark. Kendall Fedak. Bailey Finnerty. Madeline Rodriguez. Grace Zamora. And then we have coaches Chloe Hoffman and Chelsea Doss. So if I'm not mistaken, I feel like this is a very common occurrence. Do we have a very strong history at this point of making it down to nationals and doing very well?
Yes, so our dance team qualifies for nationals in the summer. And we consistently do that. This is the first time our school has ever brought home a national championship though, so that's a huge deal. And this year was the first year in a very long time that we also made it into the finals round for our conference team also. So very talented group of
At this time, we're going to have Brooke Allen is going to take some pictures. Parents, if you'd like to take pictures. Girls, if you could kind of squish together.
Thank you,
Good
ladies.
deal.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
have parents in the hallway? Yeah. Okay, good. All right, we got everybody? Jason, you guys want to sit? Good? Good? Treat yourself. All right, here we are again. This is another one of those groups that finds its way to the state titles every year after a lot of hard work. Realize what you guys put into this, and it's pretty cool to see you guys come back as back-to-back champs. So congratulations to you guys, to the Crown Point High School wrestling team for being named state champions once again at the 2023 IHSAA Wrestling State Finals. I'm going to read your commendation. The Crown Point Board of School Trustees is honored to commend the 2022-2023 CPHS wrestling team for meritorious achievement. Be it hereby resolved that the Board of School Trustees for the Crown Point Community School Corporation wishes to express sincere congratulations to the 2022-2023 CPHS wrestling team for being named state champions at the 2023 IHSAA State Wrestling Championship. The Board of School Trustees publicly recognizes this achievement and renders it permanently to its minutes to be preserved for public posterity, dated this 27th day of February, 2023. Congratulations, gentlemen. I'm going to let Coach Lorick say a few words afterwards. I'll just hand out your commendations first. Logan Haney. Congrats, buddy. Gavin Gendris. Congrats. Sonny Sessa. Congrats, buddy. Logan Frazier. Good job, buddy. Griffin Van Tischelt. Good job, Rich. Anthony Ball. There you go. Good job. Sammy Goen. Cody's not here? Right. Orlando Cruz. Nice job, man. Will Clark. His more handsome brother, Paul Clark. Nice job, buddy. Coach Lorick. Coach Hawkins. You're welcome. Coach Sessa. Cosgrove and Tree. Good. Cosgrove here?
No.
Okay. I'll give you the rest of these.
Yeah, I'll take the rest of those.
Okay. Coach Lorick, if you have anything you'd like to say about this group?
Yeah, I want to thank all of our administration, our school corporation, at our high school, the amount of support we get. You can't have successful seasons like this, especially back-to-back, without our administration and the amount of support they give us. Mr. Derilla, Mr. Marcinek, and all the administrators at the high school. It definitely takes a tribe, you know, and so with our school, our parents, you know, they do a lot for our team. I do want to recognize our individual, if I can, state champions and place winners. We had 4 individual state champions this year. We had 160-pound Sammy Goen, 182 pounds Orlando Cruz, 170 pounds Cody Goodwin, and then 220 pounds Will Clark. Out of the 11 wrestlers we took to state, 9 of them placed. We finished the tournament. Every wrestler won their placement match, which means no one left losing their last match, which is a pretty good feeling, and a pretty great accomplishment because it's hard to win that last match. Logan Haney took 7th place at 106 pounds. Gavin Gendris took 5th place at 113 pounds. Logan Frazier took 3rd place at 126 pounds. Anthony Ball took 3rd place at 145 pounds. Going through the rest of our lap. And then Paul Clark took 3rd place at heavyweight. Did I get one? And then we also had 2 more state qualifiers. We had Sonny Sessa and Griffin Van Tichel. And once again, I want to thank our parents. I want to thank my coaches and all these amazing wrestlers. They did a fantastic job. We ask a lot of them, and they reach the bar every time, whether it's in school or in athletics. So thank you, guys.
For the seniors that are here, could you raise your hand if you're wrestling in college, please? It's some big name schools as well.
Yeah, if I could just kind of mention that real quick. Sammy Goyne is going to IU next year. Orlando Cruz is going to Purdue. We try not to talk about that too much, those 2 guys. Anthony Ball is going to IU. Logan Frazier is going to Virginia Tech. And I know Anthony White is looking in. He hasn't committed to a school, but we're working on getting him out to a college. He's definitely capable. This senior class is incredible. I don't have the stats. I posted it right before state. But these guys have won 2 state titles as a team. They've taken 4th. They've been runner-ups. Our seniors alone have, I want to say they have 17 or 18 medals from the state finals, which is incredible. I don't think they've lost a duel in the last 2 years. I don't know if they've ever lost a home duel. So pretty incredible. 4-time conference champions, 3-time semi-state champions. So pretty big shoes to fill, but I just want to recognize our seniors and say thank you, guys.
You guys gonna get a picture?
Yeah. You guys just go eventually you guys want to come on this side. All good? Thank you. All right, guys, out this way. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's like it didn't like when I touched it. That's what I couldn't figure out. See how it's like yeah, it's just really glitchy. Here, can we hit escape and take it out of presentation?
All right, moving on with tonight's agenda, item 3, patrons registered to comment on educational issues. We have one this evening. Before I read his name, just to remind you, 3 minutes on whatever topic you'd like to speak about regarding educational issues. Mr. Smith will be our timer. When you get to the mic, I just need you name, address, full address, so that we have it for the records. And if, with that, we only have one this evening here on the list. Kyle Wilbanks? Did I say that right? Yeah. Okay. Kyle?
Before you begin, I'll try to give you a warning at 30 seconds, just so not being
Okay.
rude, okay?
Greetings, my name's Kyle Wilbanks. I live at 837 Schilling Drive in Crown Point, and I wanted to talk today about the redistricting of the schools. As we watch the news and we look forward to what's going on within the school district of Crown Point, there's lots of calls for transparency, both in elected officials, government, municipals, police department. I'm not seeing a lot of that transparency with what's going on with the redistricting school board. I've been to the last couple meetings. I've had the opportunities to watch them on your website. Moving forward with it is that you guys did post when your guys' the schedule for what everything was gonna be done, when the decisions were gonna be made and everything like that. But I have not been aware, or I thought that transparently wise would be a good idea to publish some of the findings that the gentleman or the doctor who you guys hired to conduct the study, so that the residents, school parents can have an opportunity to review that. Also, I learned at the last coffee meeting with Dr. Terrell that the board is gonna vote on the school redistricting without letting the parents know what the redistricting is gonna be. In my opinion, that's not transparent. You know, they also call for accountability. You're gonna sit up there and represent the people that elected you to sit here and make these decisions. I feel that you need to be accountable for the decisions that you guys make. And nobody in this room, maybe somebody else does, but I have not heard of what the redistricting is gonna be. And that the redistricting, once it's voted upon, will be published tomorrow. Is that correct? Okay, so that's what I heard, so we'll just go with that. So basing that I don't have any information on what the school districting is gonna be, and the lack of transparency is I'm gonna go off of what I've heard is where my children are gonna go to school. It appears that my children will possibly, being where I live, will go to Douglas MacArthur. And with the current stats that I pulled, and actually, you know what, I'll start out with this way. My concern, which was brought up in the last meeting, is not that my children will have to ride a new school bus, or that my kids will have to make new friends, or that it may be an inconvenience for me. My thought is on the education for my children. Okay, obviously I understand somebody always has to be number one, somebody always has to be last. When you take children from the number one or number two elementary school in the town and possibly move them to the number 6th one, I start to have a little bit of questions that I need to ask. Some of the statistics that I found is that obviously Douglas MacArthur has 10 students per teacher. Their math is at 60% proficiency and the reading is at 64. Meanwhile, Lake Street is at 82% math and reading is at 74%. And also, I'd just like to echo, because I'm not gonna have enough time, that the growth from Crown Point was 61 students last year, with an average growth of 141 students in the next 10 years. How is redistricting a viable option with those kind of numbers? And to build and spend all this money on ancillary positions for all this redevelopment within the village should be done, in my personal opinion, on allowing kids to go to school where they need to go to school. Thank you.
A lot of that'll be addressed when we get to the action item on 503, so at this point, we'll move on to item 4, the consent agenda. Dr. Terrell?
Thank you for your consideration this evening. We have 4.01, which is the meeting minutes of the Board of School Trustees. 4.02, the disposition of the stale dated checks. 4.03, grant from the Crown Point Community Foundation for AP Exam scholarships. 4.04, the Bread, Milk, and Grocery Award via School to Food Purchasing Cooperative. 4.05, a donation from Bethel Church for free students with negative meal balance. 4.06, the personnel agenda, and then 4.07, voucher registered checks as listed.
You've heard the recommendation from the superintendent and the administration for approval of the consent agenda. May I have a motion? So moved. Motion by Mr. Babjak, second by Ms. Basin. Questions or discussion?
Just want to thank Bethel Church. I think this is a few years in a row where they have done something similar to that, so where they give money to help out those in need. So thank you for your continued support.
Yeah, you beat me to that, exactly what I was going to say. But Heather, I had a question for you. I noticed we've hired a few new parapros, which I think is great. Are any of those working toward their certification as a teacher that you're aware of? Okay, Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Action item 5.01, 2023 Crown Point High School Summer School Programming. Mr. Hardman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Tonight I bring to you the 2023 summer school program. This will be very similar to what we've done in the past. The high school will be offering 4-credit courses for students in a number of areas to accelerate their credits and open up spots on their schedule for next year. There's also a part of that that's credit recovery. So this is to engage students that needed to make up credits. And then also there's a restart program which allows students to actually improve their grades by taking summer school classes. We'll also have elementary and middle school, as well as our ESY programming for our applied skills students. And those will be taking place over a 12-day, 3-week session. And those will be highlighted within our school district at 2 elementaries, Colonel Wheeler, and that will take care of their summer school. We do take a look at and consider the programming, and I did give some information on our reimbursement and how that has transpired. We're expecting something similar this year as we look at the funding for our summer school program. Seeking your approval this evening of the 2023 summer school program.
You've heard the recommendation of the administration. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Vassar. Question or discussion from Mr. Hardman? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr.
very-
Hardman.
Thank you.
5.02, Taft Middle School and Crown Point High School Furniture Award. Mr. Reese?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. We've come to that point in the construction project as we prepare to open buildings for next school year. We need to place some orders. Due to the large quantity of orders at the new Taft Middle School, we need to place that order now in hopes that we receive that and arrives on time and put together and in its spot, ready to go August 1. So tonight is the night to do that for Colonel Wheeler. The other set is at the high school. As we move the administration and counseling offices into their new space over spring break, we want to get their new furniture on site and be able to move it in once into those spaces. Instead of moving their current back out and then moving the new in the summer when the rest of the order comes in for the high school. So trying to do it just in time, change of furniture for those folks, and have it ready to go over spring break so we can move it just once instead of moving it 3 times if we do it later. So with that, we're using a company by the name of KI Inc. to provide this service for us. Due to the large quantity and volume, as you can imagine, for filling up a new middle school, it is quite a large order. And so with that, we're recommending approval of the furniture for Taft Middle School and Crown Point High School from KI in the amount of $158,495.15 for Crown Point High School, and for $1,896,365.74 for Taft Middle School.
You've heard the recommendation of the administration for the approval of the furniture for Taft Middle School and Crown Point High School from K1 Inc. in the amount of $158,495.15 for Crown Point High School and $1,896,365.74 for Taft Middle School. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Vassar, second by Mr. Babjack. Question or discussion for Mr. Reese?
Mr. Reese, are there any furniture being, what are we doing with the older furniture?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Mr.
The older furniture will be repurposed as necessary. Those that are not usable will be either donated or auctioned off.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion, or opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Reese. Before we get to item 5.03, we're going to take a little break here with a presentation regarding item 5.03. Dr. Terrell?
Thank you. So this evening, we put together a presentation that is really divided into 2 different parts. First part, we'll deal with the numbers, redistricting, what that looks like. The second part, we'll work through what the transition process is going to look like for our students. So I'd ask you to do this as we go through this. Hold your questions, if you would, until we get to the end of the redistricting part, and then we'll answer all questions at that time. And then from there, we'll go into the second part, and then we'll open up, and if there are questions regarding anything towards the end, I'll be more than happy to answer those. If you would do one other thing for me, when you have your questions, if you'll direct those to me, and then I'll direct them to the cabinet member who will be responding to those this evening. So with that, I'm going to turn it over and ask Mr. Reese if he would start our presentation this evening regarding redistricting. We had some technology issues when we were doing the presentations because it's touch panel, so it kind of sent the whole thing into a different mode, but that's why we have our director of technology here with us this evening.
Restart it.
While we're working on those technical difficulties, Mr. Vassar, do you want to, at this time, give our other business report on the legislative update? Okay. I was going to tell a joke, but I didn't think it was proper.
So fellow board members, you have quite a stack in front of you there of legislative bills that were proposed in January of this year in the Indiana Assembly. And then I also gave you another handout, put together a summary of all that. The session there now in Indianapolis it's a long session ending on the 29th of April. This is the most amount of education bills that have been presented in the last 6 years. So it's been really active in Indianapolis. Out of the 218 bills, prediction is about 160 of those will die in the time. But death of a bill isn't necessarily death of a bill, is what I'll get to in this time. The deadline for bills to get out of committee and to get past their second reading is already passed. And to get past their third reading has already passed as well. So a couple of things on that summary handout I gave you to look at is the first bullet, House Bill 1001. That's an increase in K-12 education spending, which is the biggest increase since I've been in education, a long time. But you look at that, and that seems like a great thing, and it is, but realize that funding increase comes with more money going to voucher credits and charter schools as well. And as there's talk of doing away with parents' responsibility for textbook fees, that's tucked inside the money that's going to be given to schools as well. So none of these are passed yet, but that's something important to understand where things get tucked in. Two bills have gone through so far without any opposition. One is the Secured Safety Schools Grant. It's been unopposed as it moves from the House to the Senate. And then the 21st Century Scholars Program that students, parents may realize their child signs up for that when they're in middle school. And the parents used to have to sign them up. If this passes now, that would be automatically done for them. So they don't have to worry about that whatsoever. There's lots of bills that I put on here. I'm not going to go through every single one of those. A couple of things to look for on the second page of my summary is Senate Bill 380, which will, if passed, will cap the graduation waivers that you can do it at 10% of your graduating class, which would move to 5% in the next couple of years. So I don't know what our current waiver percentage is at the high school. I do not know that, so I know Mr. Marcinick had to leave. The next one after that, Senate Bill 391, closure of school buildings. Basically what this is saying is when a school building is underutilized, it is available to charter schools or universities for that $1 bill. Does that affect Crown Point? Not at this point, depending what happens with this building, though, how this building is going to be used. So as we move forward on that. Another thing on the last page, or the second to the last page, the Student Mental Health Services Bill has a lot of attention. When I was in Indianapolis on last Tuesday in the State House, a lot of talk was going on about this bill. And this is dedicated funding for students' social, emotional, and behavioral services for trained mental health professionals, which would ease the burden on our classroom teachers. And something that's note there, Indiana, as a state, ranks last in the nation in counselor-student ratio of 694 students to one counselor. I think we're a little better than that in Crown Point. Yeah. And school psychologist ratio of 1,674 students to one school psychologist. I'm not sure where we rank there. Partisan school board election, that was that died today, where school board members had to register as a Republican or Democrat. That died today, but that doesn't necessarily mean when a bill dies, it actually dies, because the language could be reintroduced as an amendment as it goes forth. So none of these have passed yet. There's still a lot more to go. We're not going to know much more until April 29th, or actually April 30th. Can I answer any questions?
I'd just like to thank you, Tim, for your work put into this and updating us on where things stand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, back to Mr. Reese. I think we have our resolution to the issue with technology. Thank you.
Let's hope so. Good evening, members of the board. So tonight I just want to go back through the starting off process with where we started with redistricting and some of what you heard at the last board meeting in regards to data-driven, the demographic report, and then also the work we did with the local municipalities regarding the new home starts anticipated. With that, we have, and I think what many people don't understand, we'll talk about this a little bit, is We have 4 municipalities. We work with 5 really, but the county didn't have any when contacted. But we do have obviously the city of Crown Point, town of Cedar Lake and Winfield, but then also the town of St. John has a small area up in our district as well in the northwest corner of the district. So we communicated with them to see where they were at with their new home starts as well. One of the things we looked at was also the equitable balance between schools, and that's the efficient use of the capacity we have. Planning again for that future home growth so we can make sure that when we say equitable balance, it doesn't mean everybody's going to be equal. What it means is some may be lower, some higher based on where those new home starts are coming in. With the idea, and just to remind you, we haven't done this since 2009 at the elementary and middle school level. We had a small tweak in 2012, but overall, the major redistricting hasn't happened in 2009. Just to give you an idea of what that means, I'm lucky enough to know that my son's going to be graduating this year, and he started kindergarten in 2010. So nobody currently in our school corporation has gone through a redistricting. Parent may have, but no student has gone through a redistricting in our school corporation. The goal with this one is to have the same thing happen. We'd love to go another 10 or 15 years and not go through this process again, and that's the goal, as we stated last time. Also, use of major roads. Since we did the last redistricting, we had some changes in the bus transportation laws. We want to make sure we're adhering to those, as well as some undivided subdivisions. We'd rather not run different buses to the same subdivision. I think the big piece before we get into this is remembering, while it's important to each individual and their family and their students, our task is as a school corporation, and this is our family. We need to worry about all of our students, and that's who we're trying to build this around, not any individual one. And I can tell you as we work through this and working through the lines, that wasn't taken into account of what's going to impact this person. It's all about what's going to impact all of our students and provide the best situation for us moving forward as a district. So that being said, here's a picture of the current K-4 moving into the elementary areas. The different colors of the students notate where they currently are going to school at. Again, this is K-4. Obviously, 5th graders, we'll talk about in a little bit. They'll be moving on to the middle school next year. Because we have not had kindergarten registration, we don't know where the kindergarten students are. So what you see are current K through 4 students that we're projecting into 1st through 5th grade for next year. And you can see the smattering of where they're at. It's important to note, specifically, we're going to talk right off the bat about Winfield Elementary and really the lack of students near Winfield Elementary. That building's been there for quite a while, but the housing development hasn't gotten that far south in Winfield Township yet as we move through it. So, without further ado, here are the proposed boundaries for the 23-24 school year. I'll start off, and what you're going to see through the presentation is I'm going to break down each one of these individually, so you can go. We'll go through them with you, so we can break out the lines specifically as we get down to that. One thing I do want to point out is we pointed out the number of students that were not around Winfield Elementary. One of the other issues we deal with is the proximity, as you'll see here, of Lake Street, Solon, and Eisenhower. And what you'll notice in there is that we've kind of put those in the corner and then worked our way out from there, similar to some boundaries that they have now, but trying to make sure we're hitting those schools and getting as many students as possible into that area. So let's talk about Jerry Ross. I'm going to try to start in the what's going to be the northwest corner of each of these areas. So starting here, this is Grand Boulevard right now. The northern boundary along here is the township line, or 101st Street. We're going to come down Grand to 109th. There is no street currently, or will be, that runs from 109th down to 117th. But all the development is going to be on both sides of this imaginary line as we talk to the town of Winfield. So that comes down to 117th and then goes to the east along 117th over to Randolph. From Randolph, then it comes down to just south the Lake of the Four Seasons and runs over to the boundary line, which it runs over here along the eastern border of the township. So that gives you a breakdown of what Jerry Ross looks like. The important part, talking too much already. The important part to remember, this is geographically the smallest area we have. However, what you're going to see when I show you the projected enrollments, it's the most populated elementary we're going to have. One of the issues as we get into this Winfield, we understand that this while Jerry Ross sitting right here is really close to this intersection of 117th and Randolph, what we have is a situation of where we find more kids to take down to Winfield Elementary to try to alleviate some of that pressure. And frankly, Anybody else along here is, because there's not an extension of Grand from 109th down to 117th, everybody else would have to run along 109th and then come down Randolph and drive right by Jerry Ross going out to Winfield. That's why taking anybody else from this northern part was difficult. We also wanted to keep the other Lake of the Four Seasons kids, so they were all in one area. We looked at potentially dividing that, and it just didn't work out from a transportation perspective. So we come along here, and that's why we have this line that comes 117th over to Randolph and then on down, and everybody there will come down from there. This neighborhood of latitude and longitude that's going in right here, while we talked about the possibility of moving some of these areas right here are actually going to feed out onto Randolph. They don't yet, but they will. And so what we didn't want to do is take a situation where students potentially could live across the street or walkway to Jerry Ross and not go to that building and head south instead to Winfield. So one of the areas we know we're a little tight is going to be at Jerry Ross. We're anticipating a little over 600 students there as we get started. Moving on to Winfield, and it's important that you can see the geographical area here of Jerry Ross and how small it is when you compare it to the area of Winfield and the number of students that this is going to generate. If you remember back to showing the numbers of the K-4 students up there and how sparsely populated that is, a lot of the population for Winfield as we're proposing it is right here along this corridor where some of these subdivisions are near 117th, 121st out there in Randolph. So starting here in the north, this is I-65 in the northern part of our district with 101st Street. The boundary will run down 65 on down to the southern part of our boundary, across and continue across the southern part of our district. It makes it all the way over to the eastern part of our district on the township line. Comes on up, in this case it's actually the county line. In this case comes on up, sorry I'm losing my dot, but I don't know where I'm pointing at, I apologize. It comes up to the southern border then of that just south of Lakes of the Four Seasons, and then, there it is, and then on across to the southern portion of the Jerry Ross, and then that western portion there along the Grand Boulevard up to 101st then. So geographically, our largest boundary district is Winfield Elementary. What you're also going to hear a little bit, it's one of our smaller populations out there. The majority, as we looked at the growth taking place in Winfield Township, though, is taking place along 109th and 113th as we get into this area, and I think I've got it right there. Yeah, right in this area here, there's quite a bit of development happening there along the southern portion of 109th. A lot of that new portion then will transfer on down to Winfield Elementary. Moving on to Timothy Ball. So Timothy Ball reaches the furthest northwest point of our district at the cross of the two township lines here at 101st and Klein. And then we'd come south down to 231, would run along 231 all the way over to 117th, 113th, then continue running over to I-65, and then up to the northern part of the district, 101st Street, and then across the northern part. It's the easiest one to look at. All major roads, 231, Klein, 101st, over to I-65. The only small piece there is about 113th as you get just south of the Sportsplex complex there in the city. Solon Robinson. Sure. T-ball's right there in the middle, the little purple apple. I call it purple. I apologize. You good? Okay. Blue? Okay. That's what you get when you let a colorblind guy deal with colors. Let's call it the apple in the middle. How's that? Solon Robinson. Solon Robinson, located right here in the close to the center or near the edge of it there. Starts at the square, works its way south along Court Street on down to Franciscan Drive. One thing about Court Street, currently the boundary for Solon encompasses anybody who lives on Court Street would attend Solon. That would still be the case. We wouldn't change that boundary for that. Across Franciscan now, across the southern portion, a small trip down the 9 Mile or Grant Street to just south of the village is there, Faith Drive, all of that. So we have now what we're going to have our first time we're going off script other than the Grand Boulevard extension, where we're going to travel through some non-road following. And so we're going to come across here to the northern part of an area just off of the 9 Mile. We're going to jump south, and what we're trying to do is grab this Stillwater subdivision. So the Stillwater subdivision now would all go to to Solon. It comes across here on the bottom, comes up the Smith Ditch, and then juts out, and so then comes back up to 231, and then on down along 231 to 65, back up to 113th to meet the southern part of the T-ball border, and then along 231 back up to the square. So a little bit of change there by grabbing some students in Stillwater. We need to get some more students into the Solon Robinson area. So we extended their southern border essentially from the line it currently is on down a little bit to grab some of the students from Eisenhower. Speaking of Eisenhower, so the Eisenhower, we just talked about that northern border there that kind of jig-jogs its way across the northern part there. It runs then down the Court Street to 133rd, so from just south of the fairgrounds there, on down past the hospital to 133rd, across the 133rd to the 9 Mile, and then the 9 Mile on down south to the very southern portion of our township, over to I-65, up to I-65, meeting that southern border of Solon Robinson that forms the northern boundary line for Eisenhower. The next one is Lake Street. So Lake Street, similar to the situation at Solon where all the students on Court Street go to Solon, that same thing happens on this little street right here called Fat Key. So at Fat Key, same line as it currently is, all those students on Fat Key will go to Lake Street, no matter which side they live on Fat Key. Then that comes down to Burr where it connects. At Burr, on down to 121st, across the 121st, on down then Clark Street, over to the 133rd, across the southern border of 133rd, and then up Court Street or Marshall all the way back up to 231, and then forming that northern border at 231 where it meets with Solon in the corner of the square of Solon, T-ball, and Lake Street. Again, trying to keep that somewhat in the edge here and then working our way away from Lake Street to gather some students. The MacArthur also covers a fairly significant geographic area. It starts here at the 231 and Klein, comes down Klein through the lake on down to the southern portion of our southern border of our district, across to 9 Mile, and then up the 9 Mile to 133rd, and then this is the same board I just discussed with Lake Street, where you go up Clark, across to 121st, and then on up Burr to Fat Key. And that gives you an idea of what that border then is of MacArthur is. So what that looks like with the new boundaries and students, you can see here the different colors, and obviously where students are in a different color, they'll be going to potentially a new school if they're in that boundary. And we'll talk about those transitions here in a little bit. This gives you an idea, a way that maps out for the district where those boundaries are and also where the current student is. And this is where we talked about the Jerry Ross and Winfield situation. You can see the number of students that attend K4 students we have within that Jerry Ross, and trying to figure out how would you pull any students out of there, given that they're going to be over 600 students. And the fact of the matter is, we just couldn't find many students to try to get out of that area because of their proximity to the building. So with that, here are the estimated enrollments, and tied to that are the growth rates, because obviously we talked about that with the new home starts in each of the different communities. So all of our building capacities, once we're completed with construction, will be at 700. Eisenhower, we're anticipating about 500 students with a moderate growth. Lake Street at 550 with a low growth rate. There are quite a few developments within the Lake Street, but most of them are not substantial in size. Most of them are smaller developments in nature, 10 to 25 homes. MacArthur at 475, you'll notice it's the lowest populated building, but also has the highest growth rate because it does encapsulate all of the potential subdivisions and growth out in the Cedar Lake area, and does grab a little bit of what the city of Crown Point is doing on the south side of 133rd. There is a high growth percentage. That's why that building is at the lowest estimated enrollment starting next year. Solon Robinson, a low growth rate, not much development going on, about 530 students. Timothy Ball, similar at 550, also a low development rate. Winfield, we're at 520. You'll notice that outside of Eisenhower and MacArthur, there is some high growth going on at Winfield due to all those developments I talked about as we look between 109th and 103rd taking place in Winfield Township. Last but not least is Jerry Ross at 630, and that's the moderate. If anything that we're slightly uncomfortable with or concerned about that we'll be monitoring closely is Jerry Ross because, and you can see just because how many and how close the number of students are in Jerry Ross with that moderate growth rate, That is one thing that we're aware of and we'll be monitoring closely.
Before we go on to the middle school, let's stop right here, pause and ask any try to answer any questions that you may have for us. Any questions at all? If you'd rather wait till we get further along, that is fine as well, but give you the opportunity here as well.
I mean, I'd like to make a couple just general comments. This passes the eye test for me. So, I mean, I know what's going on out in MacArthur with Cedar Lake, all the developments that are going on there. And then Winfield, we know that everything around the new middle school has already been gobbled up by developers. And that's just a matter of time before that catches up. So, but you're right, that was exactly my thought was on Jerry Ross, is how soon before we hit that 700. And if it's not moderate growth and it ends up being high growth, how do we adjust to that? So that's just me thinking out loud.
Yeah. So in looking at that Jerry Ross with the moderate growth, it's really on the low to moderate. Where does it go? Based off of what we know is coming from our conversations with Winfield, with the town of Winfield, and looking at their planning proposals that are out there. So we feel like we're gonna be fine there as far as that number goes with the them being the highest, just simply because of looking at the options for additional housing there.
Which schools are most impacted from the elementary schools by the redistricting?
Yeah, so the easy answer to that is Winfield and Jerry Ross. So because they have the two different grade levels, you have K2 and 3 through 5. So approximately 300 students that are at Jerry Ross are going, or other way around, or at Winfield are gonna be going to Jerry Ross because they're in K through 2 and they'll be moving on to Jerry Ross because they now live within that district. So those are the easy ones that I can, by easy I mean they're just, because you're going from a K2 and 3-5 building, they're gonna swap essentially, now not quite because of the overpopulation at Jerry Ross, they're just gonna swap more kids than everybody else.
Right.
And we'll talk about the impact here in just a second.
Yeah, it's also nice to see that some of the load has been taken away from Lake Street as well.
Yeah, and if you go back to last meeting, that was the big issue. The why redistrict? Well, we have a building with over 740 students, and we have other buildings that are a little over 400. Right. And we haven't redistricted in over 14 years. So we've got an imbalance, and we need to get it right. Now's the time to get it right, because we have doing a middle school redistricting, and we have the expansion of our buildings taking place.
Mr. Reese, I like to see, it's very nice. I know a lot of our the redistricting from 2009 happened, and then a lot of the neighborhoods had gone in afterwards. So I know like Regency, for example, had jumped over a school to go to another school. So it's nice to see a lot of that addressed the way you guys kind of took the buildings that are so close together and kind of branched outward from that. So that seems to make a lot of sense.
We have a lot more information this time than what we did in 2000.
All right, thank you.
All right, on to the middle school. Current 5th through 7th graders. So we've looked at it, and again, the color coding are where the current students are currently at. So what we have is a situation where we have the current 5th through 7th graders. And then you see the new apple there for the future Taft Middle School. That won't say future in a few months, but right now it's the future Taft Middle School. And you can see where that's going to be located out there in Winfield Township. As we look at the middle school boundary, obviously with having now one essentially on one side of 65 and one on the other side of 65, we really looked hard. You're going to draw a north-south line to separate the district. And so where you move that north-south line, and you can tweak it a bit, as it turned out, this line works pretty well at the 9-mile stretch. We started, at 65. Where does that look as you split it that way? Then you move it over to Broadway, and where does it look? And when we got it over to the 9-mile, as you'll hear in just a second, that's where the balance occurred between the two buildings, where we have fairly equal enrollment on both buildings, and also really equal growth, new future home starts projected as well. So this line, obviously, not nearly as many lines as you're working through the elementary process, but we found, again, it met the category of we're not dividing subdivisions, and also we're using a major road to divide it when you're splitting the district in two. So this is where we're at with the middle school boundary. This is what it looks like with students. And believe it or not, when you look at that, the next step is, what's it look like? 1,085 students are estimated at Taft, the new Taft, 1,050 at Colonel Wheeler, and the growth rate's equal with a little over 3,000 potential home starts on both sides. So the numbers just worked out to be where they were fairly equal at the 9 mile. Moving it anywhere further east than that just didn't get us to a balanced building on either one of them. It offset the balances between the two. So, talk about middle school, and I'm going to hit the impact here in just a second. Any questions on middle school?
So, quick question, Dr. Terrell. Will consideration be given as, I mean, I'm sure obviously with boundaries just coming out, transportation is probably next in the works. If we can go back to that, the size of space that's taken up for the new Taft, some of those look pretty far away. Will consideration be given to transportation routes for those students so that we're minimizing that impact for them?
Yes. We're actually working through that process right now. We're probably a few to several weeks away from actually having bus routes that we can look at and roll out with that. Right now, we believe that we're going to be able to get those, the time on buses down quite a bit. But again, we've got to get to the point where we can work through those. Transportation Department has been very involved with looking at the boundaries throughout the entire process to work on what bus routes can look like. Because one of the concerns is we can't get to a point where we've got to add several buses simply because of the financial obligation that goes with that. But at the same time, we want to make sure that students aren't spending any more time on buses than they currently are. The goal is for that to go down as well as we work through it.
And just to follow up to that, is it still feasible to do the middle school, high school combo bus with the location of the new Taft?
Again, that's one of the things we're working through, trying to figure out what that can look like and what the different options are. Our goal is that we'll keep those schedules as close to being what they are right now and be able to still accomplish getting kids to those buildings as needed, in the most efficiently and effective way.
Thank you.
Yep.
So quickly summarizing the impact, elementary students, a few over 1,000 students will be changing buildings. It's a significant number. Approximately 35% of our students will be impacted by that. About 400 to 500 of those students are Winfield and Jerry Ross. So a majority of those come from those two buildings as we break the two grade levels and put them into both being K-5 buildings. Middle school students changing, a little over 900 students. That makes a lot of sense considering the current Winfield Township students come into Colonel Wheeler. They'll be going out to Taft. So you have quite a bit of change. A lot of the students are on the far west side. Let's say the elementary students from MacArthur or Lake Street, as those currently going to Taft will now be going to Colonel Wheeler. So it just makes sense. There's a significant shift as you move one of those buildings out there, and the students that were going to the other one are now going to the new one. So that's why we have the significant shift in the number of students, both at the middle school level, but also elementary due to the changing grade level at Winfield and Jerry Ross. Any questions for me on the impact or where we're at with the boundaries?
I have one more question for Dr. Terrell.
Yep.
Do we know about how many, obviously, we noted Lake Street being reduced significantly to take the pressure off there. Do we know about how many teachers are impacted with the changes that we've made here?
Yeah, so we're working through that right now with the goal of having that information out to the buildings no more than a week from tonight, to be able to release that to the teachers so they know, but also so then as we look at staffing for next year. What we do know right now is that the preliminary numbers that have come in show us at being able to do all of this with maintaining the same number of teachers at the elementary level. In other words, not increasing that number or decreasing the number of teachers that we currently have.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, Dr. Terrell, can you speak to whether any teachers will be switching schools, or do we know as far as the middle school, just for clarification?
As far as the middle school goes in particular,
Yes, the middle school.
at this time, the plan is that Wheeler will be at Wheeler, Taft will be at Taft as far as the staff goes. But with saying that, we always have our volunteer transfer opportunities for our teachers that they can put in and request a transfer. So where that could happen is if there's an opening at Taft, or there's an opening at Wheeler, and a teacher at at the other building sees that opening and would like to be considered for that, they would go through the voluntary transfer process that we have in place and that is currently open right now. Yep. Okay, so at this time, what I'd like to do is, we're gonna have our directors of education, so Sabrina and Mark and Heather are gonna take us through looking at this slide right here and knowing that 35% of our elementary students are impacted, 45% of our middle school students are impacted. What's that transition process going to look like? How are we gonna help students, parents get in those buildings to begin to become more familiar with them? So we'll start off with elementary and Ms. Ramirez.
Thank you, Dr. Terrell. As we think about redistricting, we know that there's a lot of opportunity for equity. I think that it's also honest to say that there's discomfort with uncertainty. And what I can assure you of is for the past 2 years, we have been intentionally working to align our 7 elementary schools. We have a collaborative team of elementary administrators that meets multiple times a month to focus on elementary and district needs. We have comprehensive curricula driving our teaching and learning in all 7 of our buildings with ongoing professional development to support the growth of our educators. Teachers meet as building level teams. Regularly, we also have K-5 district level professional learning communities that meet to discuss data and instructional best practices in order to meet the needs of students and to develop our network of collaboration and really aligned education across the district. We have grading practices and instructional minutes that have been developed and that are in place to further support an aligned educational experience for our students, irrespective of the building that they attend. We also have common extracurricular activities for our students throughout our elementary schools with exploratory options that are developed based around student interests. For our families who will be attending a new school next year, we will have our principals reaching out to you on March 7th, and they will be communicating with you first, welcome you via a message in Parent Square. They will also then be adding our parents for those new families attending a different school next year to their newsletter communication so that they can start to learn about the school community and about happenings within that school. We also encourage our families to follow their new school on social media, which really gives a great view into what it's like to be a student and a family in any one of our schools. Lastly, with our welcoming opportunities, our administrators, teachers, and staff are ready to welcome our new families, and they are excited about this opportunity to support a transition to make this as smooth for our students and their parents or caregivers. So we're gonna start in May with principals and or other staff members going to the school buildings of students who will be attending their school next year so that they can meet their new students, get to know them, start talking to them about the culture of their school and what to expect. And this will also be an opportunity for students to ask questions and to get those questions answered by staff that they will be working with moving forward. We also want to really maintain a very social and family-focused environment in August with popsicles on the playground, where we will invite all of the families who will be attending each of our 7 elementary schools to connect and really just have some fun activities out on the playground, as well as opportunities to tour the building, learn about procedures like arrival and dismissal so that we go into the school year very smoothly. We will also hold all of our open houses before the start of the school year. This is an opportunity for our students as well as parents to meet families and again, get acclimated with their school's expectations and kind of the culture of that building. And what I can really assure all, much as I started this, is that we are, as an elementary team, as well as a district of Crown Point schools, all in for all of our students. And I know that this transition plan will continue to evolve to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our families. Thank you.
I did. Thank you, President, board members. So for our middle schools, very similar to our elementaries, our middle school principals and administrations have been working very hard for the past few years to make sure that the same course offerings, curriculum, social, emotional programming that we have during our advisory times all exist in both middle schools. There's the same extracurriculars, co-curriculars, and very, very aligned with our clubs as well. So we hope that as our students and our parents kind of transition to a different middle school, they'll see that there's a lot of similarities in both middle schools. So, in planning on bringing our parents to the new middle schools, we've been doing this in the spring, and it's really geared towards incoming sixth grade parents. It's about that, really, if you've never had a middle school student before, what to anticipate from that journey from sixth, seventh, and eighth grade and off to the high school. But we are going to continue to have that meeting, even though the new Taft won't be ready. We'll have the meeting for our Taft parents at the current Taft building, and then Colonel Wheeler will have that meeting as well. Once we have that meeting, we'll also be able to explain exactly what all this transition planning looks like and how the communication will go for those parents. We will also be sending out some parent messaging come March for anyone that will be going into a new middle school for next year. So they'll be hearing from their principals early on, as soon as these district lines have been approved. As we get closer to the school year, we will have our traditional parent night. Again, this was normally for incoming parents that have never been to the building, but they're gonna offer that to every parent. So whether you're just starting all over again, or if you're staying in the same building and you wanna hear what's kind of new, on August 10th, they're gonna have a parent night. And obviously with that parent night, there'll be a presentation from the administrators, but then we'll also kind of have an open house so you can see the new buildings. And there's plenty of improvements that are happening at Colonel Wheeler. It's still a fabulous building in great shape, but there are even more things that we'll be looking forward to adding to that building. So then for our students, we'll have our Bulldog Rush, which has been a tradition for our sixth graders. When they first come into a new building, they get to meet their teachers, they get to get those first day jitters out, go through and see what it's like to get the lunch in the cafeteria and just kind of meet all the folks that will be there with you, students and administrators and teachers. But in addition to that Bulldog Rush, we're gonna have one for seventh and eighth grade students as they return back for the year, because everything will be a little bit different. So we want to have them have that opportunity to have that structured time in the buildings, kind of see the new buildings, see the teachers and the administrators. And then finally, we'll end with our open houses that we have, which is kind of the meet the teacher night, so that all of our students and parents can come together, be comfortable for the start of the school year. Any questions on that, or we? Okay.
Good evening. So for exceptional education, our work with inclusion and that commitment we've made does not end with this redistricting. We will continue to refine and improve our inclusionary practices at all of our schools and build the capacity of staff to work with students with diverse needs, and this includes in academics and behavior. We'll continue to provide high-quality instructional supports and services at all of our schools, as well as our very high-quality staff. We will include our new buildings that are hosting some specialty programs they've never hosted before. We've already started the work of training staff and admin teams in those buildings to prepare for the arrival of some different programs they've never housed before. Next year, for our classrooms with students that have emotional disabilities, those will continue to be housed at Timothy Ball and Jerry Ross for elementary. The middle school has a switch next year. The ED program will now be housed at Wheeler, and that was just merely due to where the students live. So there weren't enough to have a Taft program and a Wheeler program. They were almost all Wheeler. Crown Point High School also houses that program. Exciting is that we have applied skills programming in all of our buildings next year. So all 7 elementaries, both middle schools, and the high school. So more and more of our students are being educated in their home schools. Mrs. Oos, my assistant director, and myself will be calling several families tomorrow. We know change can be a little more difficult for some of our students and families. So we're gonna give some phone calls to families that are impacted by a change in a different school. Many have had the same teachers for years, and we know that that's stressful to think about having a different site and a different group of staff members, but we will assure them that we've been working with all of our staff to make sure our students get high-quality instruction at all buildings.
So before we go into questions that you might have for the directors of education, just something I think that's important to pause here and point out. Over the last 2 years, the work we've been doing, Mr. Hardman's headed up, being our chief academic officer, and working to make sure that our elementary schools have a common language, that experience, while is unique to the building, is similar in what the students experience in each building. Also then looking at our middle schools and making sure that what we're offering and doing at Wheeler, we're doing at Taft and vice versa, has really put us in a situation where now if students go to any of our buildings, they're gonna have a very similar quality of education as well as programs. And Ms. Paskus mentioned the inclusion work that we're doing, being able to have all of these different programs within the students' home school to be able to provide that. And that's a big part of inclusion, and looking at that we're able to provide the services that our students need within their school that is closest, their home school, as they go into that. So we'll pause here before Brooke and I kind of take it the rest of the way with the last couple of slides, just to see if there's any questions that we can answer for you guys about the transition and what that looks like as we move forward.
Yes, Dr. Terrell, doing this for 43 years now, I know, and I don't want to speak for any parents that are in the audience, or maybe I will, that I think parents want two things for their kids in education. They want their kids to have a good education, and they want them to be safe. That sound about right? Are we guaranteeing then that wherever their child goes to elementary school, that education, as Sabrina said, the opportunities are going to be the same? You know, school boards are charged with providing opportunities for students. So are we assuring that those opportunities are equal at all schools?
Yeah, so I think that one of the things that's very important is the short answer is yes. That is going to be the case in all of our buildings. The longer answer to that is we take a great pride here in Crown Point of the schools, the services that we provide, the educational experiences, the extracurricular experiences, as you saw demonstrated this evening, that we provide for our community, for our students. And that is still one of those driving factors of what is making our community continue to grow. As you talk with those coming in, when you talk with people who move here, those who are developing different subdivisions, developments, housing developments, is based off of what the academic experience is here at Crown Point Schools. Nothing will change with that. We only look for that to get better.
Okay, may I ask another?
Sure.
This has to do with special education. So with the programming, Ms. Paskus, I know students are going to be changing buildings, and as a former special educator, I understand those are difficult. Well, any of these building changes for our students that I see Timothy Ball, Jerry Ross, Colonel Wheeler at the high school as well, will any of the buildings be available for these students in the summertime to come and, you know, there wasn't any mention about the students being at the school, it's about the parents being at the school. Is there a chance for the students to be in that environment?
Well, part of the transition will be, can we go back a couple of slides there, someone? Will be opportunities for students to be in the buildings as well. So Popsicles on Playground was that will include the students being part of that. At the middle school level, we have Bulldog Rush we're gonna do for every student, every grade level will be a part of that. They're included they're all included. We do it all together. So we'll bring them in when we bring in our gen ed students. Go ahead.
And if we have a special circumstance where we feel like a more personal visit might be appropriate, we've done those as well. So we're happy to do that. We typically do that for 6th graders, 9th graders, so that's not a problem.
Any Any other questions on that?
I'm assuming we'll get to communication with the communication director.
where we're going
questions,
next.
and where parents
Yes.
would direct her question. Thanks.
So that's a great transition into Brooke.
Hey, good evening. So you can imagine there is a hefty lift here with communicating this information. Pending approval this evening, tomorrow our first step will be to update our staff. We start with our front office staff. All of those individuals need to be able to field a lot of questions, and information will go out to them first. And then we'll update the rest of our staff with some items that are very specific to them. We covered a couple of those things this evening, staffing, and how that will progress over the next couple of weeks. We will make sure that the website page that's there now will be updated. So this presentation will be there. We'll have a map that's more detailed than the maps you saw this evening. You can zoom in and out. You can type your address in. You can see exactly where your house is within the new boundaries. And I would say around noon, because all of those things take a little bit of time, around noon, any family who is changing to a new school will receive a notice. It'll remind them of the redistricting process, what went into it, and then it will list whatever their new school is. Next week, which is the one that I'm a little bit more excited about, parents who are going to have a change in placement for their children will start getting messages from their building level principals. And I think that's the more important component here, because those are the ones that you start to feel the environment of your new building, and you start to really feel that new culture. Be a little less formal starting next week. On our website, that redistricting page has a form at the bottom for questions, and I can't emphasize enough that we hope people use that form if they have a need or a question or they need more information. If you call a building, sometimes you get put through the next person because we're trying to figure out who needs to receive that call. But with the form, all of those will come in to our team here, and then we'll divide them out to the individual who can answer the question the best.
Would you mind advancing it to the next one and just hanging tight there for a minute? So some of the questions that we're getting a lot that we want to make sure that we address tonight, that we will address as well tomorrow, and the information that Brooke has mentioned, out of district students. So our current boundaries as far as Crown Point Community School Corporation are not changing. So with this, that doesn't mean that additional students who live outside in another township that still have Crown Point addresses, that is not changing to allow them to come into our school corporation. Our boundary does not change. Voluntary transfer requests, these are in those situations that have extenuating circumstances. McKinney-Vento parts that come into this with being displaced from homes for various different reasons. That process will still be in place and will be followed just like it has been before. Again, this is very few and far between where those voluntary transfer requests are granted. Grandfathering, going back to the last time that we did this, we had an opportunity for, if you were in 5th grade, to stay where you were, 8th graders to stay. We're not going to do that with this redistricting process, and part of that is, again, looking at that equitable experience for our students. And what we're doing at Jerry Ross and Winfield, there's no way to make that happen and make the transition that we're doing there. So we are not going to grandfather students in where they, because they're going to be in 5th grade, they get to finish, or they're going to be in 8th grade. The change, the boundaries are what they are, and that is what's going to be there. School start times, we already mentioned. We're looking at keeping those as close to what they are right now. Staffing, again, we already mentioned, and information will be going out to buildings and to teachers here within a week of tonight. So again, Brooke stated this question form really is going to be very important for our community members as they have questions. Part of that is, as you can imagine, many people will have the same question, and as we get that and can put the answer to that question online, that way when people go, they can see the same, or the answer to the questions that they may be thinking about or that have already been asked. With that, I'll open it back up for any additional conversations about communication of the plan and how that will be rolled out.
Brooke, could you just reiterate again the time frame for going on the website and be able to see where you live and find out what school you're going to be going to, and then the second half of that?
Noon.
Noon tomorrow.
Everybody plan on noon. Unless you're a staff member, you'll receive a little bit of information early.
Okay, thank you.
To be specific, oh, I'm sorry.
Let me jump in for just one quick one here. Part of that will be a link where you can actually scroll down, zoom in to where the different addresses are, streets are within each boundary. And people will be able to go to their home and actually see where their home ends up being on that map. We also, our intention is that tomorrow we'll also have it where you can go in like you currently do and type in your address to find out what school your students will go to next year. The plan is right now, if there are no glitches with that, which we think there won't be, that'll be operational tomorrow as well.
One question, the question link there, the questionnaire form on the website, is that for all inquiries related to redistricting? Meaning if a student is experiencing anxiousness and a parent wants to seek out help for the adjustment, we're a few weeks out, to the question box?
Absolutely. So in that instance, if a parent had a specific concern, we would make sure we're following up with both buildings, and then we would loop in probably one of our directors. They would make sure support staff is brought in. That's a good example of how, using the form, we can involve everyone that needs.
Great. And the second thing, I just want to reiterate, I think it's important that, we talked about this last month too, that as students are adjusting, they may have a hard time. Some may be anxious, some may be sad. We want to, as a school corporation, partner with the parents to meet the needs of the students. And I really just want to emphasize that again. So please, if you need help or if you need help, more support from the schools, please reach out. We have those resources available and happy to try to assist.
Now, on the flip side of that is also, is there going to be any instructions to parents in the initial email that goes out to kind of give some breathing space to your principals and not have their phones ringing off the hook the first couple days, because they obviously have a very important job to do in just managing their building? Is that going to be addressed in any type of communication that goes out?
Not specifically, but I can tell you, we all know tomorrow will be busy, our principals included. That's what it is. We're here to answer questions. We may not get back to you right away, because we'll have more questions this week than a typical week. But I think everybody's prepared to, take it as it comes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Brooke.
Moving on to item 5.03, approval of the new elementary and middle school boundaries. Mr. Reese?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. After going through the information that we presented tonight and last meeting, we're happy to recommend the boundaries as described tonight in the presentation for the elementary and middle school boundaries.
You've heard the recommendation of the administration for approval of the new boundaries for the elementary and middle school buildings. May I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Babjack. Question or discussion? I would just like to bring up something. Redistricting in a community like this is a necessity. If you go back to 2009 numbers, we had 7,610 students. We are currently just a shade under 9,000 total. So if you look in 14 years, almost 1,400 students, or I'm sorry, 20, almost 23, no, that's right, 1,400, almost exactly. So about 100 students per year in average growth. This happens in different areas at times, middle school, elementary, and high school. But once again, most of you that have either moved here in the last few years or been here forever, stayed here or moved here for a couple reasons. One, that these schools are top ranked in the state, and there's no argument about that, no matter what level you're at, elementary, middle school, or high school, and for the low tax rate compared to where maybe you came from. With that in mind, I can tell you, every decision made behind this decision and moving lines coming from the information provided by Dr. McKibben is all about the educational purpose of each and every one of those 8,900 kids. Not just one or two, not just three or four, but it puts them all into the equation. So with that being said, if you contemplate 8,900 students, you take into effect some split families, you're probably dealing with 23,000 parents when you make decisions that are gonna be affected by this. So it's not taken lightly. With the help of a cabinet that's experienced in each one of their areas, with a superintendent that's been involved in this in other districts he's worked, this is the best plan that we've come up with. And I can tell you, with meeting with board members individually, because you have to do that, can't have more than three of us in a or two of us in a meeting. I met with them last week. Not everybody was on the same page from start to finish on this decision. And we've talked through some of those, and not every argument has been so-called answered. But I just want to make sure that the public does realize that this isn't taken with a grain of salt. And there's a lot of hard work put in behind the scenes, which you can tell by the presentation and just some of the information. And I can tell you, kids are usually resilient, raising four of them myself. Each and every one of them is different. The kids will be the easiest part of this. Yes, they'll find friends at the new school. Between sports they play, activities they're involved in, the gaming online, all of them will adjust accordingly. What I would ask those of you parents is that you help them with that and explain to them, and if there are concerns like Mr. Smith mentioned, that we work out those concerns, because this is the best interest of your students. Sometimes mom and dad might not be appeased or applauded with what just occurred, or because they got to move schools or do something like that. But I just want to say, just work with us, because I promise you, the education of your students to the top of our level that we can provide is what came behind almost every part of this decision, other than just fixing boundary lines.
Well stated, Mr. Angel.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries 5-0. Superintendent's discussion groups, anything from, we're still, I know, kind of cities, Cedar Lake, Winfield, and the city. I know Winfield hasn't done anything. Brian, anything with Cedar Lake?
Nothing from Cedar Lake. I know we're transitioning, so it's.
Oh, Tim, go
Section
ahead with
10.
Cedar Lake.
Yes, I have Cedar Lake.
Okay.
That's okay. Interesting to know, their redevelopment commission and their town council are one and the same. I don't know if you realize that or not, but they're one and the same. So I was able to go to their meeting a few weeks back. Two subdivisions, which Mr. Reese alluded to, being built in, within the Cedar Lake town limits. One is just going from 133rd Street, moving south to 141st. That's an entire mile as the crow flies, just on the other side of the lakeside subdivision. They're looking at maybe as many as 800 new homes there. It's a big swath of land. And the old South Shore Golf Course, some of you may have golfed on that at one time. That was originally going to be taken over by the YMCA as a campsite. That deal fell through, so now a developer has swallowed that up, and they're looking at 200 new homes on that site as well. For our transportation department, soon, they're gonna be starting a sidewalk project that starts from the boat launch in Cedar Lake off of actually be Lakeshore Drive, all the way to the town hall. So our transportation department be aware of some delays going on there.
Thank you,
That's
Tim.
it from Cedar Lake.
Anything from the city? Brian?
The city just, the RDC just approved some grants for restaurants, new restaurants coming in off 109th. I think the biggest aspect or thing that, event that occurred at the meeting was the city acquired some property. The hope is that they're gonna extend the old railroad easement and a bike path and eventually complete it. So as part of that project, they'd acquire a piece of property to have proper access under roads, and they're going to extend that all the way down to Hebron. That's the goal, so that we would have a bike path from Crown Point to Hebron. So that's what acquired there.
And just to let the public know, we're provided a opportunity to have a member on the redevelopment commissions of these 3 different taxing entities, hence why this part of the discussion is for that aspect of it. Thank you. 6.02, Director of Elementary Education. Anything else tonight?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President and board members. I just wanted to take a moment to recognize our
Eisenhower Eagle Bots. They have really put in a lot of hard work and dedication this year. This team won the Elementary School Excellence Award, which is the highest award presented in the VEX Robotics program, and they also earned a bid to compete at the state level. So we're very excited for them and for all that they have achieved and will continue to achieve. I'd also like to thank the administration, teachers, and staff at Timothy Ball with their construction project very well underway over President's Day weekend. They moved 17 classrooms and didn't miss a beat with students returning the day after President's Day, and so that was a lot of hard work and just really everybody chipping in to make that a success. Lastly, I'd also like to just kind of share a great opportunity that I had last week, which was to attend the kickoff event, which was a convocation K-5 at Timothy Ball, which was filled with high energy teacher and student minute to win it kind of games, as well as then the reveal of their One Book, One School. And this has really been something that our elementary buildings have been embracing and will continue to embrace, which is really promoting literacy and a love for reading both at school and at home. So it was just a great honor to get to see the kids' excitement and the teachers really, kicking this off with a lot of energy. So thank you.
Thank you. Director of Secondary Education.
Thank you, Mr. President, board members. Mr. Vassar had a question earlier about our waivers for our diplomas. And due to the magic of a live feed and Mr. Marcinek being tuned in, I received a text, and your answer is less than 5% right now, waiver rate, so that is great. And thank you, Mr. Marcinek, for being so diligent. Now back to my report. So I want to congratulate 4 students from Crown Point High School for being named National Merit Finalist. You have to have a pretty darn high score on the National Merit Qualifying Test to be considered that. This is Lucas Johnson, Andrew Goldthorpe, Bryn Nordemir, and Adam Fusella. And just to put that in perspective, 1.5 million students take this test, and then to be a semifinalist, you have a score, move to 50,000 students, and then from there they narrow it down to 15,000 students out of there. So congratulations to these 4, and hopefully maybe we'll get them in front of you guys at some point in time, because that's quite an achievement. We also had some other students accomplish some things over the course of February. We had a team of Tyler Anderson and Quentin Osborne. They participated in the Top Notch Tech Challenge, and this was another first place finish. And this is through the Universal Technology Institute School. And this is Tyler's actually 2nd year in a row, so he's a 2-time champ, just like some of these other guys we had up here earlier. And they receive a $10,000 scholarship to the Institute, which has all kinds of schools across country, and a large toolbox and hand tools, so congratulations to them. Really emphasis for these 2 guys was automotive and diesel. That's the area they were competing. And then one more student, we kind of gave him some airtime last board meeting, but Tyler Hudak went on and competed in the state tournament for chess, and lo and behold, after 8 hours of play, he was the only undefeated player and is first place in the state as well, so congratulations to him. Just in closing, I want to thank the Crown Point Community Foundation for providing, they kind of annually help us with our AP testing fees. And if you know anything about the AP tests, they're very pricey once you start taking 3, 4 AP classes. So this is much appreciated. It really helps our students that need that extra assistance, so they don't have to turn down not having that opportunity because they don't have the funds. So again, thank you for them for always supporting us. Thank you.
Thank you. Director of Exceptional Education, Ms. Paskus.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Next week is National School Social Worker Week, and I would like to recognize 4 staff members we have that serve in the role as school social worker. Last year was our first year having an Indiana Department of Ed licensed school social worker on staff, and we've gone up to 4 this year. Not sure what we did without none. We could triple and quadruple the amount, and it wouldn't be enough. But these ladies provide invaluable support to our students, our families, our staff. They help students navigate social and emotional difficulties that they're having at school. They help connect families to community resources if they need to carry out any assistance within the community. And they're just all around, just very helpful ladies. So I'd like to recognize Mary Ree, Sandy Specker, Tara Verdusco, and Evelyn Bratton. Also, there's one more chance to catch our Exceptional Learners basketball team at the high school. They have one last game next Wednesday night, March 8th at 6 p.m. So if you're able to, please join us.
Thank you. Chief Academic Officer, Mr. Harbin.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are embarking on our second level of Learn Academy courses. These are courses that our teachers teach teachers. Currently, we have 21 new courses that have been applied for. If you recall, in the fall, we had probably over 350 teachers attend these sessions, learning from their peers. It's always a great time to see the people stepping out to be able to help other teachers to hone their craft. On the personnel agenda, there's 3 vital people in our buildings that are going to be retiring, and we are going to feel that when they retire. All 3 are secretaries in their buildings. Sherry Hadorowicz at Eisenhower and Anita Griffith at Winfield have been at those buildings for as long as I can remember. And they will be sorely missed, and just want to congratulate the 2 secretaries at the elementary schools for the work they've done, the support they've given, and I look forward to their time of retirement. The third person is Sherry Tokley, and Sherry is a secretary that works in our office, curriculum and instruction. Sherry started at Taft, and then when a position opened here at Central Office in curriculum and instruction, when Gene Williams went to be treasurer, Sherry stepped in. I have been trained by 2 of the best secretaries that there could be, and she's going to be dearly, dearly missed. And I just want to honor her because of the work that she has done. She was Employee of the Year a couple of years ago, and she will be someone that we're going to miss. And she is also one that works right to the final bell. So we're gonna take advantage of that, and maybe even a little beyond that. So we'll see. So just congratulations to those 3 secretaries.
Thank you. Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Reese.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. There's been some questions, discussions come up regarding TIF districts and redevelopment commissions now that we have some new folks on the board and new people in new spots regarding their responsibilities towards those. So tonight I want to take a few minutes just to give you a quick TIF 101 to give you an idea when you're going to those meetings, what that looks like and what's really taking place in those redevelopment commission meetings. So the simple purpose of a TIF is take an area that is either blighted or not developed and doesn't have the infrastructure necessary to maintain development in that area. So what happens is an area is deemed to be a TIF district, a TIF area. Bonds are then issued for the development of that, for the infrastructure. Think water, sewer, the roads, the things you need to develop an area to make it attractive to develop. Those bonds then are used and capture the tax increment financing, which is what TIF stands for. So what it does is freeze the assessed valuation of the area that they assume at that level. Any additional assessed valuation, they capture those property taxes for that through the redevelopment commission, and those taxes that they've captured are then used to pay off the bond issue that takes place. So it's an inventive way for communities, municipalities, cities, towns, counties to develop areas and give the infrastructure a boost to get that development to actually take place. That's the premise of it before. It's now being used as a development because when you define blighted, each city and town municipality will have a different definition of what blighted means. So that's why you see all along Broadway, a significant one, that's a blighted area that's due for development, also along I-65, 109th. The benefit, and this is honestly, it really is, a lot of schools come across this TIF being negative. And I guess it would be if you knew that was going to be developed, but what a great way to get an area to get developed. So then hopefully 20 years down the road, we can capture that growth and that assessed valuation. An important piece of some of this is that the taxes that are are captured the assessed valuation, they don't get the money that comes from our referendum fund. We actually, any growth in that assessed valuation within the TIF district, we get to capture those taxes. The impact of schools used to be different when this first started. So the last report I gave to you was back in January of 2013. We had a completely different funding structure. We didn't have the operations fund. We had 3 different funds. Each were impacted differently by TIFs. That's no longer the case. So what happens now is because all those funds are levy controlled, not rate controlled, it allows for us to raise the taxes necessary up to our maximums. And what that does is if it reduces the assessed value, we can raise the rate to match the levy that we're allowed to raise. All those funds have a maximum levy that we're allowed to raise. So we don't lose any revenue. The only loss comes from the additional tax rate we need to have. Any of those properties that are hitting the circuit breaker, whether inside the TIF or outside the TIF, raising that tax rate causes a small impact to the circuit breaker to us. So in general, they've set up those TIFs so that it's actually beneficial. Now, as a word of warning, if we were to get to a spot where a majority of our assessed valuation or a large piece of our assessed valuation was tied up in TIFs, therefore we are raising our tax rate significantly to make up that levy, then it could cause our tax rate really to go high, and that would be a problem for us. That's not been the case for our entities. We have 3 of our taxing entities that have TIFs right now. It is Crown Point, it is Cedar Lake on the Center Township side, and then Winfield Township also has a TIF. To give you an idea, when I did this report back in January of 2013, the impact from the TIF was 4.37% of our assessed valuation was captured inside a TIF. In 2023, because we have our assessed valuations for this year, that number is now 4.75. There's been very little growth. Now, the dollar amount, the AV that's been captured has been significant, but so has our overall AV grown in that same period. So the percentage of our assessed valuation tied up in the TIF is very similar to what it was back in 2013, which is a testament to our entities that they've governed themselves such that they've limited the growth of those TIFs and not eaten up more of our assessed valuation. So that's a brief synopsis on that. So what you're looking for on these boards is when they're putting residential inside a TIF, that's a problem because now we're educating students, and other than the referendum fund, we're not getting those dollars for them in the operations fund to educate them. Now, some of that obviously is changing with the funding formula proposals downstate. That just gives you a general premise. Residential inside the TIF, not so good. Anything else, we love seeing commercial AV inside TIFs because that really benefits us, and I think we're willing to play the long game over 20 years to get that assessed valuation when it rolls off the redevelopment commission and onto the other taxing entities. Any questions you might have for me regarding the TIF, and I'd be happy to give you more specific information, but try to keep it at a high level tonight.
Yeah, Mr. Reese, you might be happy to know, last Tuesday, there's a lot of talk on TIFs at the State House. And there's a push by ISBA to have our school board members as we represent on our redevelopment commissions as Brian and Scott and I do. We're on the board, but we have no voting rights. The bill is being presented for us to have voting rights, which would help us in this regard. So we'll wait and see what happens with that.
Yep.
After hearing that wonderful explanation, I'm so happy I'm out of the property tax consulting business for the last 8 years. But thanks, Matt. Director of Communications, Ms. Allen.
Thank you. Next to each of your computers is a copy of the newest We Are CP, which is our print newsletter. We distribute that twice a year, one in summer and one in winter. Residents should see that piece in their mailboxes later this week, probably, maybe even early next week.
I can tell you it's arrived in the Winfield area already. I can tell you that. And thank you. It's well done again. Thank you. Last but not least, Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Terrell.
Yeah, so this evening you've heard multiple times about all of the additional activities that are provided for our kids after school hours, on weekends. And I just want to thank all of those that are involved and for all the opportunities they provide for our students. And that's everybody from the elementaries all the way through high school, and thank them for the extra work there. Secondly, just want to give you guys a building progress update. Again, thankful for the partnerships we have in Skillman and Gibraltar. I know we've heard comments was able to take Scott Angel on a tour with Dion of Taft, the new Taft, last week. And I know we hear people say as they drive by, there's no way that building's going to be open. I can assure you that it's going to be open and it's on schedule, if not a little bit ahead of schedule. When you walk the building right now, lockers are in, rooms are painted, ceiling tiles are in. It's amazing where we are with that building, and very shortly here, end of April, beginning of May, we'll actually have furniture being delivered for classrooms as well. So that's just one example. You heard of the teachers at Timothy Ball who were able to move classrooms over President's Day and way ahead of schedule there. Actually, they're going to get use of their gym at spring break, which wasn't supposed to happen until this summer. So those are just a few examples of the progress that's being made and the fact that we are at or ahead of schedule on most of our projects. And given the circumstances with getting supplies in, with getting people to work at different jobs and different positions, just a real testament to Skillman and their connections here throughout our community, as well as all the subgroups that work for them as we put this thing together. There's 120 to 130 people working every day out at the new Taft. And when you go in there, I mean, it's literally buzzing with activity every day. So thank you to those people and the continued work that they do.
All good. Thank you. Any other, item 7, other business of the board other than Mr. Vassar's legislative report? Anything else that needs to be brought up tonight? Diana, have we received an email yet on the spring regional meeting yet? On what, a date? Okay. Other than that, I don't foresee any other calendar dates they be made aware of. But as soon as we have that, Diana usually shoots out an email. With that, we'll move to item 8, board statements of appreciation and recognition. Anything for you tonight, Mr. Vassar?
Well, I do want to say I had a great opportunity to talk to one of our bus drivers a couple of weeks back. We had a great conversation, and he wanted to tell me that he was so appreciative to it's funny because the wrestling team was here tonight, to the Parents Club, Wrestling Club. I'm not sure if I have the correct name there, but he drove the wrestling team to an all-day event, as most wrestling meets are. And the parents afterwards, the parent club gave him a sizable tip for his services. And I just thought that was really neat, to do that. So I just wanted to shout out to those folks for that. They made one man really happy.
Thank you. Ms. Bazin, anything tonight?
Nothing too crazy, except we do have sectionals for boys basketball tomorrow evening. And for those of you who haven't followed, AJ Lux is a senior this year. We had senior night on Friday, so they recognized our seniors. AJ Lux is, I believe it's 2 points away from his 1,000th point. So if you are at all considering coming out to sectionals, it'll be, should be a really good evening. So anyway, I appreciated getting to kind of go and be part of the crowd. It was very close at the end, and everyone was hyped up, hoping that he was going to hit it last Friday. So hoping for it this week, but anyway, appreciate kind of the community feeling that gives altogether.
Thank you. Mr. Babjack?
I just want to say a general thank you, Todd, to everybody that's been involved with this redistricting process. And I know that this is something that's gone on for a while. This isn't something that happens overnight. There's going to be people pleased, people not so happy about it, but the job of this board is to make sure, first and foremost, we vote on it, we approve it. It ultimately ends with us, but our job is to make sure that the right people are in place to make these decisions and build these processes and do what's right for the kids in Crown Point. And I'm 100% confident that you guys did that. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Yes, thank you. Just to follow up on Mr. Babjack's comments, I remember 6 years ago when he and I came on the board together, and one of the reoccurring themes back then was classroom size, over and over and over again, everywhere I went. Our classrooms are too crowded. Our teacher to student ratio is too high, and unfortunately, one of the downsides to that redistricting may have to occur to help address that as well. And it was never discussed tonight, but it is true. If you feel like your classroom size is, you have 700 kids at Lake Street and your classrooms are too crowded, this could help alleviate that. And as we started mulling over processes, and Dr. Terrell was hired, and we were looking at buildings and expansions, and we needed to do that with the growth. You know, for lack of better words, this is a necessary evil, and, you know, redistricting, but it's a good problem overall, right? It means that our schools are good, people want to be here, they want to be in Crown Point, they want to attend our schools, they want to live in Crown Point. We are blessed with a great community, great school corporation, and we're fortunate to have the problems we have. And so, again, I want to echo your sentiments and thank you to all you who worked extremely hard. I know, Mr. Reese, you put in a ton of time in your presentation on this, so thank you for your effort. And it really is a whole team. So I know it's hard to say that in a day when people aren't all happy, but I think it needs to be said. There's a lot of work that goes into this, and so thank you for doing that. The second thing I want to say is Heather invited us a few weeks ago to the Exceptional Learners basketball team at Crown Point. I did take you up on your offer, and I went out there, I think 2 weeks ago, watched the Crown Point Lowell game. I saw Dr. Terrell, and I was blown away, both on many levels. What an awesome experience. And the students were just so loving and caring for each other. The players were so caring. And I was blown away by the fan support, because there was a lot of people there at that game. And what an awesome opportunity for those students and those players. And I'll tell you, there's some people that can really play basketball on our team. We're loaded with talent. We had one kid, I think, hit 2 3-pointers. So, you know, it's a pretty good team. And but what a lot of fun. So thank you for the invite for the other board members and other individuals out there. If you get a chance to go watch the Exceptional Learners basketball team, I recommend you do that on occasion. It's a cool experience. So thank you.
Thank you. Just on that regard, 2 weeks ago Friday, one of the special needs students, young ladies in a wheelchair, sang the national anthem. I happened to be there for the Valpo game, and I mean, if there's nothing that doesn't put goosebumps on your arms, and listen to that and the round of applause she received, because she did an outstanding job. So if we can get her name, Diana, make sure we get it in the minutes. I didn't catch her name that evening. You have her
I
name?
believe it was Zoe Borum.
That sounds like, yes, I believe so. Dr. Terrell was there that night. So if we can make sure we get her mentioned. And then Dr. Terrell kind of touched base. I'd like to give a appreciation accommodation tonight to, not accommodation award, but shout out to Skillman Corp. Walking through that building and knowing that we're supposed to have students in that building on August 17th, I missed the previous tour, hence why I asked for an updated tour. It is amazing to see 120 to 150 workers in different aspects. So whether it be drywallers, steel workers, mudders, tapers, it was just unbelievable to see how organized that is, and them working, like, for the 45 minutes I walked through that building, how nothing was being interrupted. Walking back to see updated boilers, which are basically now like scientific tubes rather than an actual boiler. I mean, I'm not in that line of work by any means, shape, and I wouldn't want to be knowing what's going on, but it's just amazing. And so kudos to them for organizing our projects for a long, long time and making sure that. For those of you that are listening, my wife joined the tour because she's been part of this community as well. And it was so ironic, as we were ready to walk out the door of the side, a mouse came through one of the side holes and ran by her. And if you knew my wife pretty good, that wasn't that. But she held her breath, and things were okay, and it ran through the other side of the room. But you just never know what you're going to see. But just thank you, Skillman, for everything you've done for us. I mean, I know we reward you compensation-wise, but knowing that we're in your good hands, knowing we need to get those kids in that building, I feel very confident in our experience with them that will happen on time. Just before we adjourn here, thank you for all that came out tonight, whether you be a parent, one of our employees, teachers, administrators, all that. We do acknowledge you showing up and sitting through the meeting when there's information that needs to be given out to the community, and all of those that have, sure, we probably broke a record today with those following online. So thank you to all those that participated for the meeting. 230. So see, I knew that number was going to be up there tonight. So thank you to all those that stuck with us through the meeting with the technology difficulties that we fixed. With that, can I get a motion to adjourn? Motion by Ms. Bazin, second by Mr. Babjack. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries 5-0.